welcome to another video. This week I want to make some indoor garden creatures using this Crayola air dry clay that I found. I've never used this before, but I thought it might be fun to try. The only other thing I took out were some dark colored round beads to be eyes. I did end up using more than just these two materials, and I'll have a full material list down in the description. So just getting started here, I'm just going to take off a chunk of the clay. And with this piece, I want to make a frog. I have worked with other clay in the past, and I've noticed that it always helps to really work the clay to get it started. So I'm just going to make the frog as best as I can with this clay, and as I have tips or tricks that I can share, I'll pause along the way. So one thing I want to mention is if you have seams or cracks in the clay, you want to be sure to go the opposite direction of whatever seam or crack that is in order to blend it in. So when I'm putting these legs on, in order to really make sure they're on there, I'm just going against the direction of the seam in order to make those stay. So it's at about this point in the design of my frog that I realized I was having trouble with some of the pieces sticking and everything blending together the way I wanted. The instructions on the clay itself say that you can use water with this clay. That's one of the additional materials I ended up going and grabbing. That and some makeshift tools. And as you can see here, I'm using a Q-tip to smooth out some of the rough edges on the frog, any of the seams that didn't quite blend together, or any of the cracks that were forming as the moisture from the clay was being absorbed into my hands or evaporating. Alright, and while that dries, I'm going to start another one. This piece of clay, I want to turn into a snail. And with this one, I want to just keep it all in one piece. I'm just going to smooth it out using some water and a makeup sponge. Alright, and once I have that in a place that I like, I'm just going to put in some beads for eyes. Use the end of a paintbrush to make a spiral. And one last thing I want to do for the snail is give him some antennas. So I'm just taking some gold tone jewelry wire and some jewelry pliers and creating two antennas to stick into the clay while it's still wet. That way they'll be stuck in there hopefully when it dries. And speaking of drying, the clay says it takes 2 to 3 days to dry depending on how thick you make the piece. I let the frog dry for 4 days and I let the snail dry for 3 days. So I just want to use my Mod Podge and my varnish to seal these. I figured it would be good to use the Mod Podge as a layer between the clay and the varnish, since the clay, it says to keep away from liquid. To secure the eyes to the snail, I just used some super glue to glue the beads in place. So once the Mod Podge has dried, I just want to take my varnish and coat them with that as well. This will take away any of the tackiness from the Mod Podge. And with the varnish dry, I decided to add one more thing to the snail. I thought that adding some more beads in the little impressions I made with the end of the paintbrush would complete the piece. So I'm just going to use the super glue that I had used before to glue on the snail's eyes to just glue these beads into place. Alright, and now the snail and the frog are both done. That's it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next week.